Alright, another Lord of the Rings video. So I got an article that I want to read here where Philippa Boyens, she made some comments in an interview where you could say she was trying to justify making changes or expanding on Tolkien's lore, Tolkien's world, and I wanted to make some comments on it. So I'm on Bounding into Comics, Lord of the Rings, War of the Rohirrim co-writer Philippa Boyens defends decision to expand original canon. Professor Tolkien said in his letters that sometimes the most compelling story is the untold story. And basically I want to say that this quote is being interpreted wrong, if you ask me. In the opinion of longtime Lord of the Rings Silver Screen scribe Philippa Boyens, the decision to expand on J.R.R. Tolkien's original writings for the new anime-inspired film The War of the Rohirrim was inspired by the legendary author's own opinions. And I'm going to skim through a good bit of this. The movie is set 200 years before the Lord of the Rings trilogy, stars Hera, Helm Hammerhand's daughter that Tolkien did not name in his appendices. Directed by Blade Runner Black Lotus co-director Kenji Kamiyama, the film's production is notable for two specific reasons, as not only is it the first animated entry in the franchise's cinematic continuity, with an anime-inspired aesthetic at that, but it also takes heavy liberties with Tolkien's original writings. As originally detailed across roughly 2 total pages in the series Appendix A, as found at the back of Return of the King, the first flames of the titular war were sparked when King Hammerhand is met with a request from the Rohan Lord Freka for the hand of Helm's daughter in marriage for his son Wolf, to which the ruler responds with a quip of the nobleman's weight. "You have grown big since you were last here," the king declares to Freka, "but it is mostly fat, I guess." Enraged at this result, Freka proceeds to attack the king only to be killed by a single blow from his royal fist. And I'll skip over some of this stuff. Wolf waged war on Rohan. Wolf ends up taking Edoras. Helm was driven back with great loss from the crossings of Isen and took refuge in the Hornburg and the ravine behind, which was after known as Helm's Deep, and Helm ends up dying at Helm's Deep. He dies standing there frozen to death, but he kills quite a few enemies with his fists before he goes. Alright, so I'll read from here. As readers may have already surmised, perhaps the biggest difference between Tolkien and Warner Brothers' take on this conflict is the fact that King Hammerhand's daughter is both given an official name and plays a major part in the actual war itself. Yeah, Helm Hammerhand's daughter is really only mentioned for, one sentence? 2 sentences in the appendices in the story, and she doesn't have a name. And she really plays no part in the actual war. And Philippa Boyens, she and company, they decided to make Helm Hammerhand's story about her in order to put in the modern day strong female character girl boss trope, to update it for modern audiences. And a lot of Lord of the Rings fans don't like that. They want to see them stick to Tolkien's writings. According to the aforementioned Boyens, who most notably helped pen the screenplays for all 3 original Lord of the Rings films and the Hobbit trilogy, these changes to Tolkien's original writings were ultimately made in apparent deference to the spirit of the author himself. Speaking to the film's development and production histories during a promotional interview with IGN, Boyens explained that the decision to take what amounts to little more than a brief interlude and expand it into a full-blown cinematic tale stemmed from Tolkien's own writings. "We can't ruin Tolkien's books," Lord of the Rings writer Philippa Boyens said on War of the Rohirrim. Professor Tolkien said in his letters that sometimes the most compelling story is the untold story, said Boyens, referencing the author's January 30th, 1945 letter to his son Chris. The actual quote reads, "A story must be told or there will be no story, yet it is the untold stories that are the most moving." And I got my Letters of Tolkien book in front of me. I'll read you a little more here. So in that letter, Tolkien says, "A story must be told or there will be no story, yet it is the untold stories that are most moving. I think you are moved by Celebrimbor because it conveys a sudden sense of endless untold stories. Mountains that seem far away, never to be climbed, distant trees, never to be approached, or if so, only to become near trees." But as he puts it, mountains seen far away, never to be climbed, and distant trees never to be approached. I don't know about you, but I interpret that as leaving some things as mysterious, leaving some questions unanswered. That's what it sounds like to me. And there are times in a story or in a fantasy world where I think it's better to leave things a mystery. I think that if you were to just answer every single little question, then that would really only end up ruining the whole mystique to that world. In this case, Middle-earth. Jumping off his colleagues' points, Adult Swim exec and the War of the Rohirrim producer Jason DeMarco added, We could tell a story within that didn't change anything that Tolkien put down, but still flesh it out to be what it needed to be. But why does the story need to be fleshed out? Why does the story need to be told? As Tolkien puts it, yet it is the untold stories that are the most moving. Some things are better off left a mystery, some stories are better off left untold. Some questions are better off left unanswered. Why did Philippa Boyens and Warner Brothers feel the need to make this Helm Hammerhand fanfiction? Well, part of it might have been Warner Brothers about to lose the rights to Lord of the Rings if they didn't make something, but I digress. So I think that it was that and a callback in a cool way to say there are many legends of many strong people, strong women who have done these things who may not be written in the histories, he argued. But that doesn't mean that they weren't exciting stories. Who may not be written in the histories by Tolkien himself, the creator of Middle-earth, but that doesn't mean they weren't exciting stories. Well, no, they weren't stories at all because Tolkien never wrote them. Therefore they didn't happen. And the problem I have with this statement is, it's the idea of taking somebody else's story and quote-unquote making it their own. It's this attitude of thinking that Lord of the Rings is ours now, we have the rights and therefore we can write stories or expand on stories as they put it, and whatever we come up with is canon even though we didn't actually create that world. Lord of the Rings is not your story, it's not my story either, it's Tolkien's story. So only Tolkien's writings are canon. Your expansion of these stories, it's just fanfiction. To this end, Boyens then touched upon the film's opening narration, which hears the Shield Maiden Eowyn, as voiced by her original film actor Miranda Otto, explicitly tell the audience not to seek out any stories about Hera in the old songs because they literally do not exist. That was deliberately saying to the audience, we know what we're doing here, we know, we understand that, stay with us, she detailed. Where we work from is don't just change something arbitrarily. If we're going to change something, do it for good storytelling reasons, and then anything you bring to it, make it feel real, make it feel authentic. To this end, Boyen was then asked if the film's production team had taken into consideration the vocal pushback from Tolkien fans regarding these changes, to which she confirmed, I don't think you can. You know, it's like Tolkien didn't just write books, he wrote an entire mythology, a vast incredible work which is so detailed and so complex, and works on so many different layers, and you can leave that alone and not touch it. But he himself did not want that, and he himself said that he wanted other minds to come to it. Now this quote here, Tolkien himself saying that he wanted other minds to come to it, I'm trying to find this quote. Boyens, she's making it sound like Tolkien wanted people to expand upon his lore of Middle-earth. If any of you can find the exact quote where this comes from, by all means let me know. The one question that I would ask here is, do you think Tolkien would have approved of this film? Me, my guess is no. There are Tolkien letters where he's commenting on proposed film adaptations for Lord of the Rings where he absolutely shreds them. I don't think he would have approved of this movie. He definitely wouldn't have approved of Rings of Power. And look, for the record, Christopher Tolkien, he was not a fan of the Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings trilogy. A lot of people who are fans of Rings of Power are defending Rings of Power, are trying to claim that Peter Jackson and company disrespected Tolkien's lore just as much, if not more, than Amazon did, which is absolutely not true. Did Peter Jackson make some changes? Yeah. And do I like when movie adaptations make changes from the books? No, I don't. I want them to stick to the book to a T, or stick to it as much as they possibly can. But there's no question that Peter Jackson showed the utmost respect to Tolkien. Amazon, on the other hand, has not done that. And I'll also make this comment. Thank God the Lord of the Rings trilogy was made 25 years ago and not today. If it was made today, it would have been a hell of a lot worse. We can't do anything to those books. Those books are going to stand as these masterpieces hopefully till the end of time. We can't ruin them. So people who come at you saying, oh, you ruined this, or oh, you ruined that, no. All we did was we presented you with an adaptation of this work, and some people will come to it and relate to it, and some people won't, she concluded. And sometimes a criticism is justified and sometimes it isn't. Based on the box office return for this movie thus far, I think most people don't really like what you've done. Now look, my general opinion on adapting somebody else's work, or expanding on somebody else's lore, in this case Tolkien's lore, if you did not create that story, then you do not have the right to fundamentally change it. If you're going to adapt an author's story, the respectful thing to do is to stick to what that author wrote. Yes, the story of Helm Hammerhand, it's only 2-3 pages long, but there is enough information in that story to tell you that Hammerhand's daughter was not the main character of that story. She did not have a big role in that story. They decided to make her the main character in the story of Helm Hammerhand, and the reason why they did it was to inject the modern day strong female character trope into it. And by doing that, yes, they did fundamentally change the story of Helm Hammerhand. They're taking a character who was mentioned for 2 sentences, didn't have a name, and didn't play a major role in the story of Helm Hammerhand. They're taking that character and making a full movie out of her. And they're using this quote from Tolkien, "A story must be told or there will be no story, yet it is the untold stories that are the most moving." They're taking that quote and using that as an excuse to create a fanfiction story in Lord of the Rings. When really that quote, it means there are some stories that are better left untold, some questions are better off left unanswered, some things are better off left as a mystery to the reader, to help add a level of mystique to that world. And I mean, who knows, folks? Maybe this story of Helm Hammerhand and his unnamed daughter, maybe Tolkien wanted that story to be kept a bit more mysterious and not fleshed out and expanded into a full movie. I don't know though. Bye everyone.